Something strange happened when Jim Carrey appeared in Paris. At first,
It's a wonderful feeling. I really took on a pretty big challenge trying to do my speech in French.
it looked like a normal celebrity moment. Cameras flashing, fans cheering, a legendary actor receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Caesar Awards. But within hours, the internet exploded with one shocking question. Was that really Jim Carrey? Clips from the event started spreading across social media, and people noticed things that didn't quite add up. His face looked different. His voice sounded calmer. Even his eyes appeared to be a different color. For decades, Jim Carrey has been known for his wild energy, his exaggerated facial expressions, and that unmistakable spark in his personality. But the man standing in Paris felt different. That's when the theories began. Some people claimed he had simply aged or possibly had cosmetic work done. Others believed something far stranger was going on. The word clone started trending online. And then comedian Katt Williams entered the conversation, talking about hidden truths inside Hollywood.
Researched my whole life on what the entity was before I got there, My intention was to get in there and kick up some dust and try to become a whistleblower that they don't knock off. Because, they get all the whistleblowers.
And powerful people who silence those who speak too loudly. Suddenly, old interviews, mysterious speeches, and cryptic jokes from Jim Carrey's past started resurfacing. Fans began connecting dots that had been ignored for years. And the deeper people looked, the more questions they had.
There's a huge conspiracy theory about beloved Hollywood actor Jim Carrey right now because people are saying he's acting and looking very different. Did the Illuminati finally get their loudest whistleblower and clone him, thus silencing him? This is like two conspiracy theories in one, so here's everything you need to know.
I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it, to be the whistleblower.
So yesterday, 64-year-old Jim Carrey received a Caesar Award in Paris, which is like a French Oscar. And he was just suspiciously acting out of character for the iconic Jim Carrey personality. And longtime fans also noticed he looked younger or very different. And for a lot of actors in Hollywood, that's the norm. He's 64. I support people getting work done. But a lot of conspiracy theorists who are really just diehard fans say normally Jim Carrey would never do this. His whole brand is drastically changing his facial expressions and melding his face into whatever he needs to do for his role. It's just the last person you would ever expect to do that.
Because if even a small part of these theories were true, it would change everything we thought we knew about Hollywood. The moment Jim Carrey stepped onto the stage in Paris, something felt off. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The crowd applauded as the legendary actor walked out to receive an honorary award at the Caesar Awards, the French equivalent of the Oscars. For decades, Jim Carrey had been one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. From unforgettable roles in movies like The Mask, Ace Ventura, and The Truman Show, he had built a career on exaggerated expressions, explosive comedy, and unpredictable energy. But this time, fans watching the footage online noticed something different. His movements seemed slower, his voice sounded softer, and his facial expressions, the very thing that made Jim Carrey famous, appeared strangely controlled. Within hours of the footage appearing online, social media started filling with questions. Why does he look different? Is it just me, or does this not feel like Jim Carrey? Something about this is really strange. At first, many people assumed the obvious explanation. After all, Jim Carrey is in his 60s now. Faces change with age. Lighting at events can make people look different. Camera angles can distort appearances. But then viewers started doing what the internet does best. They compared the footage. Clips from the Paris ceremony were placed side by side with older interviews. People analyzed his jawline. They zoomed in on his teeth. Some pointed out that his eyes appeared greener than they had in older videos, where they seemed darker. And once the comparisons started spreading, the theories became more dramatic. Some people claimed that the man in Paris didn't just look older. He looked like an entirely different person. Soon the word clone began appearing everywhere. To many people, that idea sounded ridiculous. But to conspiracy-minded corners of the internet, it felt like confirmation of something they had suspected for years. because Jim Carrey had not always been a typical Hollywood celebrity. In fact, for much of the last decade, he had been one of the most unpredictable voices in the industry. Unlike many actors who carefully protect their public image, Jim Carrey often spoke openly about power, politics, and the strange nature of fame itself. His interviews sometimes sounded more like philosophical lectures than celebrity conversations. And one particular moment still circulates online today. Years ago, during a red carpet interview, Jim Carrey completely stunned a reporter when he suddenly began talking about the meaninglessness of celebrity culture. He looked around at the glamorous event and calmly said that none of it actually mattered. He told the reporter he didn't believe in personalities. He even said something that left viewers completely confused. "There is no me," he said. At the time, people laughed. Some thought he was joking. Others assumed he was simply being philosophical or spiritual. But now, years later, those same clips are being shared again with a very different interpretation. Because in hindsight, some fans believe Jim Carrey might have been hinting at something deeper. During several interviews over the years, he spoke about how the identity, Jim Carrey, was just a character he created. He explained that the version of himself the world knew was something he had built intentionally, almost like a performance. According to him, the real person behind that character was much more complicated. Those comments might sound like abstract philosophy, but when people look back at them now, they seem strangely eerie, especially when combined with the rumors that began spreading after his appearance in Paris. But the theories surrounding Jim Carrey didn't start recently. They actually go back many years. Over time, he became known for giving speeches that challenged powerful institutions, criticized political systems, and questioned the way society operates. At times, his comments made headlines because they were so unusual for a Hollywood star. One of his most talked-about speeches happened during an event honoring comedian Charlie Chaplin. During that speech, Jim Carrey spoke about what he called capitalism without a conscience. He warned that systems built purely around profit could lose their sense of humanity. The audience applauded, but the message was serious. It showed a very different side of the actor who once made millions of people laugh with goofy comedies. Then there was another moment that fans often point to. During an appearance on a late-night talk show, Jim Carrey began joking about secret symbols and powerful organizations controlling narratives behind the scenes. At first, it sounded like a comedy bit, but the way he delivered it made some viewers wonder whether he was joking or hinting at something real. He joked about a secret symbol called the all-mocking tongue and suggested that television hosts were part of a system designed to distract the public. The audience laughed. The host laughed. But Jim Carrey kept going. He said he was there to blow the lid off it. Again, many people treated it as a joke. After all, comedians often exaggerate things for effect. But now those clips are resurfacing again, especially among people who believe that powerful industries quietly shape what the public sees and hears. And this is where another name enters the story: Katt Williams. In recent years, comedian Katt Williams has made headlines for speaking openly about what he claims are hidden dynamics within the entertainment industry. During interviews and podcast appearances, he has suggested that Hollywood operates under systems most outsiders never see. He's talked about powerful gatekeepers, he's talked about careers being controlled, and he has even hinted that some celebrities who challenge the system face consequences. Whether people believe those claims or not, the comments gained massive attention online. And when Katt Williams began discussing whistleblowers and hidden truths in entertainment, fans quickly connected his words to people like Jim Carrey. Because in the eyes of some observers, Jim Carrey had already spent years questioning the same systems. That connection is one reason the Paris appearance triggered so much speculation. For those who already believed that certain celebrities were being silenced or replaced, the footage seemed like confirmation. But there's another reason the theories grew so quickly. Jim Carrey had slowly stepped away from Hollywood in recent years. After decades of starring in blockbuster films, he began focusing more on painting, philosophy, and living a quieter life. He even suggested during interviews that he might retire from acting. That shift in lifestyle led some fans to believe he had deliberately distanced himself from the entertainment industry. And when someone who has openly criticized fame suddenly appears again on a major stage, people start asking questions. Of course, there are far more reasonable explanations. Actors age, people change. Lighting, makeup, and camera angles can create dramatic visual differences. But the internet rarely settles for simple answers. Instead, it builds theories. And the more pieces people think they find, the more convincing those theories become. Soon, other moments from Jim Carrey's life began resurfacing online as supposed clues. One of the most tragic involved the death of his former girlfriend, Katt Williams, in 2015. Her passing became a major news story at the time, and Jim Carrey faced a difficult period of public scrutiny and legal battles afterward. Although the legal cases were eventually resolved, the event had clearly affected him deeply. Some conspiracy-minded groups later began weaving that tragedy into larger narratives about Hollywood pressures and hidden conflicts behind the scenes. Again, there has never been evidence supporting those claims. But in the world of internet speculation, stories often grow far beyond the original facts. By the time the Paris footage circulated across the internet, all of those old events had become part of a much larger mystery. Fans were no longer just analyzing how Jim Carrey looked. They were re-examining his entire career. Every speech, every interview, every unusual comment. And to some people, those moments started forming a pattern. A pattern that suggested Jim Carrey had been trying to tell the world something for years. But if that's true, the question becomes much bigger. Was he simply speaking philosophically about fame and identity? Or did some people believe he had discovered something inside Hollywood that most outsiders never see? Because if you follow the theories circulating online, some fans believe the Paris appearance isn't the beginning of the story. They believe it's the final chapter of something that started many years ago. And according to them, the next piece of the puzzle involves a series of controversial interviews that pushed Jim Carrey into one of the most intense public debates of his entire career. Long before the internet began debating whether the man in Paris looked different, Jim Carrey had already become one of the most controversial voices in Hollywood. For most of the 1990s and early 2000s, the world knew him as the unstoppable comedy machine. His films dominated the box office. His face could twist into 100 expressions in seconds, and audiences loved the wild energy that seemed impossible to control. But somewhere along the way, that image started to change. Fans began noticing that Jim Carrey was becoming quieter, deeper, almost philosophical. Instead of simply promoting movies, he started talking about identity, ego, and the strange illusion of fame. During several interviews, he said something that confused a lot of people. He claimed that Jim Carrey was not a real person. According to him, it was a character. He explained that early in his career, he intentionally created a personality that audiences would enjoy watching. That personality became famous, successful, and loved around the world. But behind it, he believed there was something much bigger than the identity everyone recognized. To some listeners, this sounded like spiritual thinking. Jim Carrey had openly talked about meditation, consciousness, and Eastern philosophy, but others thought the message hinted at something darker about the entertainment industry itself. Because when celebrities talk about playing characters, they usually mean movie roles. Jim Carrey seemed to be suggesting that even his public identity was part of a performance, and the deeper he went into those ideas, the more unpredictable his interviews became. Then came one of the most controversial chapters of his public life. During the late 2000s, Jim Carrey and his partner at the time, actress and television personality Jenny McCarthy, began speaking publicly about autism awareness and medical treatments. They appeared on major talk shows discussing their experiences and advocating for biomedical approaches they believed had helped Jenny McCarthy's son. The conversations quickly turned into heated national debates. Medical experts strongly criticized many of the claims being made during those interviews. Headlines exploded across news outlets. Scientists, doctors, and advocacy groups pushed back hard against the suggestions being discussed on television. Almost overnight, Jim Carrey found himself at the center of one of the most polarizing health discussions in America. Supporters praised him for speaking his mind. Critics accused him of spreading misinformation. The controversy became intense. For a comedian who had spent most of his career making audiences laugh, the backlash was something entirely different. And according to many observers, this period marked a turning point in how Jim Carrey approached public life. After years of constant attention, he began stepping away from the spotlight. He focused more on painting. He talked about personal growth and spirituality. And he appeared less frequently in the massive Hollywood productions that once defined his career. At the same time, another side of his personality began emerging. Through his artwork and occasional interviews, Jim Carrey started criticizing political systems, economic structures, and what he believed were powerful institutions shaping public narratives. Some of his paintings directly mocked politicians and government figures. Others attacked greed, corruption, and corporate influence. For fans who had grown up watching him in comedy films, this new version of Jim Carrey felt almost like a completely different person. Instead of goofy humor and cartoonish characters, he was discussing existential questions about identity and society. And that shift only fueled the theories that later exploded online. Because conspiracy communities often look for celebrities who seem to challenge powerful systems. And Jim Carrey's words sometimes sounded exactly like that. One moment that frequently gets shared online happened during a strange and unforgettable appearance on a late-night talk show. During the interview, Jim Carrey began joking about secret organizations and symbols hidden in plain sight. At first, the audience assumed it was just another comedy routine, but the way he delivered the joke was unusual. He held up a strange hand gesture and called it the all-mocking tongue. Then he jokingly accused television hosts of being part of a system designed to distract the public from what was really happening in the world. The crowd laughed. The host laughed. But Jim Carrey kept going. He claimed he was there to blow the lid off hidden secrets. Of course, comedians exaggerate things all the time. And in the moment, most viewers treated the entire segment as a parody of conspiracy theories. But years later, those same clips began circulating again online. People started analyzing every word he said. They debated whether the performance was pure comedy or something closer to satire with a serious message underneath. And that's exactly the kind of ambiguity that fuels internet speculation. Because Jim Carrey always existed in a strange space between absurd comedy and deep philosophical thinking. Sometimes it was impossible to tell when he was joking and when he was completely serious. Then another chapter of his life brought intense media attention. In 2015, tragedy struck when his former girlfriend, Katt Williams, was found dead in Los Angeles. The news shocked fans around the world. Reports revealed that the two had recently ended their relationship before her death. The situation quickly became a painful public story, especially when legal disputes followed in the years afterward. For Jim Carrey, the entire period was extremely difficult. He attended her funeral in Ireland and reportedly struggled with the emotional aftermath of the tragedy. Eventually, the legal battles connected to the case were dismissed, but the experience left a permanent mark on his public image. Some conspiracy communities later tried to connect that event to larger theories about Hollywood pressures and hidden conflicts. However, there has never been credible evidence supporting those claims. Still, when people online start building narratives, even unrelated events can become pieces of a much bigger story. By the late 2000s and 10s, Jim Carrey had almost completely changed his lifestyle. He appeared less frequently in films. He spent more time painting and creating art. And when he did give interviews, the conversations often focused on spirituality, consciousness, and the illusion of identity. At one point, he even said something that sounded almost surreal. He claimed that Jim Carrey was simply an idea the world had agreed to believe in. To him, the person behind that name was something much deeper and more complex than a Hollywood star. Those statements fascinated some people and confused others. But they also reinforced the idea that Jim Carrey had mentally separated himself from the celebrity identity that made him famous. And that brings the story back to the moment that restarted the entire internet debate: the appearance in Paris. After years of relative quiet, Jim Carrey suddenly appeared on stage at a major international event, smiling, joking, and accepting a prestigious Lifetime award. To many viewers, he looked happy and relaxed. But to others, something about the moment felt unfamiliar. Not necessarily wrong, just different. And when fans compared the footage to older videos, the differences became a major talking point online. Some claimed his face looked tighter. Others pointed to changes in his teeth. A few even insisted his eyes looked like a different color entirely. Most likely, those differences could be explained by lighting, aging, or simple camera variations. But once a theory begins spreading online, it rarely stops there. Soon, the speculation became more dramatic. People started asking if the real Jim Carrey had stepped away years earlier. Others claimed powerful industries might silence celebrities who challenge the system. And that's when the name Katt Williams began appearing in discussions surrounding the story. Because while Jim Carrey had spent years speaking in philosophical riddles, Katt Williams had recently started speaking far more directly. During several explosive interviews, Katt Williams described Hollywood as a place where powerful figures control careers, shape narratives, and protect their own interests. His comments went viral across the internet. Millions of people watched the clips. Some believed he was exposing hidden truths. Others believed he was simply stirring controversy. But regardless of what people believed, those interviews reignited interest in stories about celebrities who might have challenged the system. And suddenly, people were looking back at Jim Carrey's strange speeches in a completely new way. They wondered whether his philosophical comments had been misunderstood. They questioned whether his jokes about secret symbols were really just jokes. And most importantly, they began asking a much bigger question. If someone inside Hollywood really did try to expose hidden systems of power, what would happen next? Because according to the most dramatic theories circulating online, the Paris appearance may not just be about how Jim Carrey looks today. Some people believe it represents something much bigger. They believe it could be connected to secrets that powerful people have spent years trying to keep hidden. And if that idea were even partially true? As the clips from Paris continued spreading across the internet, the theories surrounding Jim Carrey only grew more intense. But as people kept digging through old interviews and speeches, the discussion slowly shifted towards something much bigger. Instead of just asking whether the man in Paris looked different, some began asking why Jim Carrey had spent so many years criticizing powerful systems in the first place. Because when people revisited his past interviews, they noticed a pattern. Again and again, Jim Carrey had spoken about illusion, not just in movies, but in society itself. He talked about the idea that many of the identities people chase, fame, wealth, celebrity status, are constructed narratives. According to him, society encourages people to chase those identities without realizing they are often just roles being played inside a larger system. For most viewers, those comments sounded like philosophical reflections about life. But to conspiracy-minded audiences, they sounded like something else entirely: warnings. And that interpretation gained even more attention when comedian Katt Williams began making headlines with his own explosive claims about the entertainment industry. During multiple interviews, Katt Williams suggested that Hollywood operates through powerful networks that control which careers succeed and which voices get pushed out. He spoke about gatekeepers. He spoke about hidden power structures. And he hinted that some celebrities who challenge those systems may face serious consequences. Those interviews spread across social media at lightning speed. Millions of viewers watched clips where Katt Williams described an industry filled with secrets and influence most people never see. Naturally, people began connecting those comments to celebrities who had previously spoken in unusual ways about the industry. Jim Carrey quickly became one of the most discussed names in that conversation. Because unlike many actors who carefully avoid controversial topics, Jim Carrey had repeatedly stepped into uncomfortable territory. He mocked powerful institutions. He criticized political systems. He even joked about secret organizations controlling narratives in media. Whether those jokes were serious or not, they gave conspiracy communities plenty of material to analyze. But there was another event happening in the background that caused the internet to connect even more dots. In recent years, renewed investigations and public discussions surrounding the case of Jeffrey Epstein brought global attention back to the question of powerful elites operating behind closed doors. As documents, testimonies, and reports continued surfacing, many people began questioning how someone with Epstein's connections was able to operate for so long without facing consequences. That story reopened a broader conversation about hidden networks of influence. Suddenly, discussions about powerful people protecting each other were no longer limited to internet forums. Major news outlets were covering the topic. And for conspiracy communities, that development seemed to validate years of speculation. So when footage of Jim Carrey in Paris appeared around the same time these conversations were happening online, some people interpreted it as more than coincidence. They believed the timing was suspicious. Their theory went something like this. If celebrities who speak out against powerful systems become dangerous to those systems, what happens next? Some claim those individuals are discredited. Others believe their careers are quietly pushed aside. And in the most extreme theories, some people suggest that public figures could be replaced entirely. That's where the idea of cloning entered the story. To be clear, there is no scientific evidence that human cloning technology exists in the way these theories describe. Yes, scientists have successfully cloned animals in laboratories. The most famous example is Dolly the sheep, cloned in 1996. But cloning a fully grown human with identical memories and personality is something far beyond anything modern science can do. Still, the idea has fascinated conspiracy communities for decades. According to these theories, powerful organizations might replace influential figures with controlled versions who continue performing the same public role. Again, there is absolutely no proof supporting this concept, but when fans looked at the differences they believed they saw in Jim Carrey's appearance, the theory gained traction online. Some viewers insisted the energy felt different. They said the man in Paris seemed calmer, quieter, almost like he was playing a version of Jim Carrey rather than being the unpredictable comedian they remembered. Others pushed back strongly against the theory. They pointed out that people change dramatically over time. Jim Carrey is now in his 60s. Anyone who compares a person in their 60s to footage from their 30s or 40s will notice differences. Faces age, voices change, even personality can evolve as someone gains life experience. And in Jim Carrey's case, his journey over the last decade has been very public. He stepped away from the constant spotlight. He focused on painting and creative expression. He spent years discussing philosophy, spirituality, and self-discovery. It would actually be surprising if he still acted exactly the same as he did during the peak of his comedy career. But the internet rarely settles on simple explanations. Instead, it thrives on mystery. And the mystery surrounding Jim Carrey continues to grow every time another old clip resurfaces online. There's the moment where he said identities are illusions. There's the talk show appearance where he joked about secret symbols. There are the speeches criticizing systems of power. Each of those moments means something slightly different, depending on how people interpret them. Some viewers see a comedian experimenting with philosophical ideas. Others see a celebrity trying to wake people up to uncomfortable truths. And a few believe something even stranger is happening behind the scenes. But perhaps the most interesting part of the entire story is what Jim Carrey himself has said about identity. Because according to him, the character the world knows as Jim Carrey was always just that, a character. He once explained that when he first came to Hollywood, he intentionally built a personality that audiences would love. That personality became famous. It became successful. But eventually, he realized the character had grown larger than the person behind it. In other words, the world fell in love with an idea that Jim Carrey himself helped create. And when he later began stepping back from that identity, It confused people who expected the same loud, explosive comedian they had always known. So when viewers today watch the footage from Paris and say he feels different, maybe that feeling comes from something much simpler than cloning theories or secret replacements. Maybe the character people remember has simply evolved. Or maybe the man behind the character has finally stopped playing the role the world expected from him. But in the world of internet speculation, questions rarely disappear. Instead, they multiply. Because once people start looking for hidden meanings, every gesture, every word, and every appearance becomes another clue. And that's exactly why the conversation around Jim Carrey continues today. Some believe he was trying to reveal truths about fame and power. Others believe he was simply exploring philosophical ideas in a very public way. And many people think the entire cloning theory is nothing more than internet imagination running wild. But one thing is certain: whether he's delivering wild comedy performances or deep philosophical speeches, Jim Carrey has always been one of the most unpredictable figures in entertainment. And sometimes, unpredictability is all it takes for a story to grow into a mystery that captures the entire internet. Because in a world where information spreads faster than ever, even the smallest moment, a speech in Paris, a change in appearance, a resurfaced interview, can turn into a global debate overnight. And the question that started it all still lingers online. Was the man standing on that stage simply a legendary actor accepting a well-deserved honor? Or did the internet convince itself that something far stranger was happening behind the scenes? That answer depends entirely on who you ask. So what do you think? Was the man on that stage in Paris simply a different version of Jim Carrey after years of personal change? Or is there something deeper going on behind the scenes in Hollywood? Over the years, Jim Carrey has said many things that made people stop and think. He talked about identity being an illusion. He questioned fame, power, and the systems that shape the world we live in. Some people believe he was just sharing his philosophical views. Others believe he was trying to hint at something much bigger. And now, with these clips from Paris spreading across the internet, the debate has started all over again. But we want to hear from you. Do you think people are overanalyzing a normal moment in a celebrity's life? Or do you believe some celebrities really try to expose hidden truths about the entertainment industry? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion might open up an entirely new perspective on this story. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the internet's strangest celebrity mysteries, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because the next story we're uncovering might be even more unbelievable